you wherever in the world you are. Welcome to the Health Zone Show with Micheál O'Mathúna, where with each episode I explore interesting health and well-being topics with a thought-provoking guest. These topics can range from nutrition, relationships, spirituality, finance, creativity, mental health and much, much more, so that you can live a healthier, happier and more authentic life. Guests on the show vary from health experts, spiritual teachers, finance wizards, sports legends, to ordinary people with extraordinary lives. Find us on facebook.com/The Health Zone Show, or you can also join our Facebook group, The Health Zoners. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest under The Health Zone. Check out our new updated website, www.thehealthzoneshow.com, and at the moment you can receive a free copy of my latest ebook, 7 Ways to Boost Your Overall Well-Being when you join The Health Zone.
Paving your way for a healthier day, The Health Zone.
Today I'm chatting with author Nagual, Toltec Master of Transformation and son of Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. Hello, Miguel.
Hi, Miguel. How you doing?
Very good. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's such an honor and I'm privileged. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So, Miguel, I know your father is the author of many New York Times bestsellers, including The 4 Agreements. But what inspired you to follow in his footsteps?
Well, to a certain degree, I'm actually following my grandmother. It was her desire to open up the tradition to a community. You can say that we come from a lineage of Toltec Eagle Knights and teachers. Her grandfather, Don Ezequiel Macias, taught in his own unique way. He lived to be 116 years of age. And he, the thing about an oral tradition is that it goes back as far as living memory. So it was my great-great-grandfather, Don Ezequiel, who began, well, at least in our tradition, to share it. I don't know the name of his father, so he shared it, but to a very few people. And then his son, Don Leonardo, he found a way to teach it through music, and he was also a military man, so he was a band leader in the military in Mexico. And he'd only taught it to a select few. So then came his daughter, my grandmother, Madre Sarita, and they had this desire to share with the community. So, being married to a military man herself, and her father being military, they moved quite a bit, and they found themselves in Tijuana, Mexico, and eventually she crossed the border into San Diego. And in San Diego, she opened a small little temple, and there in that temple, she began to do faith healings and healings and consultations. But her true love was to give lectures and sermons on Thursday nights and Sunday mornings. And it's there where you can say that she began to really teach the Toltec tradition, because it was no longer taboo. Don Ezequiel, he lived the majority in the 1800s, and it was a taboo to teach anything outside of Catholicism, or at least the ancient traditions of Mexico. And little by little that dissipated, because the Inquisition ceased to exist over 200 years ago, and little by little that lost power and that taboo slowly began to fade. My grandmother had that desire. She just wanted to share with the community. She began to give lectures, and her most favorite lecture was to a panel of doctors at UCSD San Diego, University of California, San Diego, and she taught about faith healing to the doctor panel there. So from there, she became the first woman to be hired as a faith healer in the state of California here in the States. And from there, she became famous, or her notoriety expanded or grew. And her son, my father, Don Miguel Ruiz, was a neurosurgeon, and he had a life-changing experience. And when he had that experience, he couldn't explain it. And being a medical doctor of man of science, he decided to question it and more look deep into it. And the person he trusted was my grandmother and his grandfather, Leonardo. So he let go of being a medical doctor. At the age of 32, 33, he let go of practicing medicine, and he began to devote his time to studying the family tradition. And little by little, he began to teach. He began to do to grow. If my grandmother opened the gates, my father destroyed the gates, and just a flood of information just came through, and to such degree that uh, about 17 years after he let go of the medical practice, or 15, he wrote a book called The Four Agreements, and that book that went around the world. So I can say that with honesty that I'm following my grandmother's vision, her fire, you can say, and me and my father, myself and my brother, we all three write books. We're basically continuing that tradition. We're doing the things that Don Ezequiel and Don Leonardo couldn't do, and we're thoroughly enjoying the process. It's a wonderful opportunity. It's an opportunity that we've given permission to share this tradition, this family tradition, with the world. And so far, it's been helpful to a certain degree to the people who've wanted to listen or have read the book, and we're grateful for that.
And Miguel, I'm curious with regard to how come your father decided to leave the medical practice and move into this work?
Well, according to how he's described it to me, as a medical doctor, he felt like he was in this conveyor belt. He just kept treating the consequences and conditions and symptoms, and he never got to the root of it. As a doctor, he always worked and he worked, but it was always treating the consequences, and he wanted to get to the root of it. So when he had this life exchanging experience that he couldn't explain, he decided to focus his attention on what causes a lot of these conditions, especially as a neurosurgeon as he was, and he was studying the brain, and he was going through psychology as well. He mixed and combined the two traditions. You can say that in my life, I grew up with duality and juxtapositions quite a bit. You balanced spirituality and academia. You balanced spirituality and everyday life. And my father found a way to bridge the gap. He put it in a language that he could understand. He let go of some of the symbols that were Toltec, the symbols of Quetzalcoatl, Tezcatlipoca, the smoky mirror, the ethereal egg, all those traditional symbols that we grew up with, and put it into a language that we can all understand, what he would refer to as common sense. And when he put the teachings into what we know as common sense, that language was what allowed it to go around the world. So from that point of view, it was a desire to let go, to really follow his heart, to follow what he wanted to create. And of course, you can already imagine such a decision doesn't come easy, especially married with two children and a third one on the way. He chose to he just took this leap of faith, if you want to call it that, and he was successful. It's not always the case. Most of us sometimes work and we let go and may not work, but in his case, it worked out.
Has it worked out for you, Miguel?
Yeah, it has. When I was young, I also rebelled. My father rebelled in his own unique way. He became a neurosurgeon. He went through the way of the science, and he had a life experience. So I also grew up, and I also rebelled against the tradition. Seems to be that is a tradition in and of itself in the family. And I studied film. I worked in the film industry in Los Angeles and San Francisco and in Tijuana as well. And I got, that's the thing. When you graduate from college, a bubble bursts, and life happens. And all these things that my grandmother and my father had taught me, growing up as a teenager, being their apprentice, a lot of the stuff felt like it belonged in a history book. What does it have to do with my life? And as a child, listening to our fathers giving them a lesson, we interpret it as our father telling us what to do. Even though I still listened because I loved my father, I still wanted to do my own thing. And when I graduated from college, I just went away as far as I could from all of it. Went to Berkeley, went to Oakland, and continued studies and worked in the film industry. And then one day, life happened. I've had some personal experiences, and when I read the Four Agreements the first time in 1997, I picked up the book. I read about a couple of chapters and then put it down. It's my dad telling me what to do all over again. But then life happens. I learned my experiences. I picked it up like everyone else does. And it it has showed me in a totally different way. I saw it for what it was, this instrument that allowed you to heal. So I began to continue the teachings in my own unique way. I used my own language. I used my own understanding of it to continue what my father had done, which is to put in a language that we could understand. And really what life is that it's our greatest teacher. You know, we're given these instruments that our teachers are, our professors, you can say, these spiritual teachers. And life gives us the opportunity to put into practice, and it turns out that they're instruments that informs my choices, but I'm the one making the choice. So when I understood that and I allowed it to help me, I began to share it in that same way. You know, I understand that I control to the tips of my fingers, and I'm responsible for what I say, but I'm not responsible for what people hear. I'm not responsible for the will of another individual. But with that understanding, I do my best to be as clear as possible and understand and share the family tradition as clear as I can, and only speak about the things I know and don't touch the things I don't know.
Miguel, what has been your greatest challenge in regard to these teachings in your own life?
I would say when I first started, you know, I used to get the question which one was the most difficult agreement to follow, which was, I used to answer being impeccable with my word, or making assumptions, or taking it personally. And then after a while, I realized the reason why it was so difficult, it was because I was pretending to be something I'm not. I was using the 4 agreements to domesticate myself, to live up to an expectation that didn't exist. And basically, when I used the 4 agreements to domesticate myself, I corrupted and turned it into the 4 conditions of my personal freedom. And then that's when I realized that's the reason why it was so difficult, because I was trying to be something I am not. I was trying to live up to this image that doesn't exist. And when I realized that, I became aware that, you know, these agreements only have value if I say yes to them, if I agree with them, and if I use them as an instrument to inform my choice. And at that point, I accept the truth. I do take things personally. I do make assumptions. I sometimes don't do my best. Sometimes I'm not impeccable with my word. And if you follow the 5th agreement also, sometimes I'm not skeptical at all. And I accept the truth of me. But at the same time, it allows me to become aware that I also have a choice to say yes to those agreements. That's what an agreement is. It's just the action of saying yes. So you can say that now it's different, because I know that I can use any form of information as this instrument, but I'm the one making the choice.
What do you think stops people from being true to themselves?
Well, it's basically we believe an illusion, or we believe a lie. And, you know, that's the best way to let go. The moment we lose awareness of who we are, or the authentic self, whatever expression you want to use, is the moment we prefer the illusion or the lie over the truth. And the illusion or the lie, it's like, for example, I create an image of Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., one that someone can, if I create this false image of self, and, you know, if I live up to it, then I'm worthy of love, I'm worthy of acceptance. If I don't live up to it, then I'm worthy of my own rejection, of my own punishment. And this is the way I domesticate myself. I love myself conditionally. And because I want the acceptance, I want to be worthy of love, and I believe that, then I'm going to always judge myself against an image that doesn't exist. And because I'm measuring myself to this image that doesn't exist, the thing that happens immediately is that I reject who I am at this very moment. That I reject the person I am now. So when I become aware that I'm doing that who I am and what I am is just this living being, this experience of living life, then I'm comparing myself to an image that doesn't exist. And the way to let go of the illusion or the lie is to accept the truth of who I am at this very moment. And who I am at this very moment is the result of every choice I've ever made in my life. I can't go back in the past and change a no to a yes, or a yes to a no, and the future doesn't exist yet. The only thing that exists is this present moment that moves with me from the moment I am born until the moment I die. And that's who I am. I'm this living being that's constantly changing, constantly evolving. And to me, that's the reason why some of us forget who we are. We believe that image, that people project onto us and that we believe it, that that's who we are, and then we always have to live up to that image. And the willingness to let it go is to really see ourselves as someone without a definition, someone without meaning, just simply a living being that gives meaning to every belief I have because I say yes to it.
You may or may not know Anthony de Mello, Miguel. He's a monk and he wrote a book called Awareness a while back. But in the book, he said that if we live our lives based on the approval, the acceptance, praise and popularity of other people, we're destined for misery. Do you think this is true?
Oh, yeah, because we're not living our own life. We're living someone else's opinion. We are allowing someone else's prejudice or someone's vision of us to control our lives. And that's the thing that happens when we domesticate ourselves with that image. We subjugate our will. We say yes when we want to say no, and we say no when we want to say yes, all for the sake of living up to an image, and that is not even ours. So it's definitely something that makes us suffer because our natural tendency is to be free. And when we subjugate ourselves and we make choices not really reflecting what we really want in life, but because of this projected image or this someone else's prejudice, then we're not living our life, and we feel it. We sense it, and it's part of our reason why we're not happy with our life, because in the short time that we have, whether it be 116 years of life or 25 years, we didn't live life for ourselves. We lived it for someone else's opinion, which is different than living as a community, giving and sharing and creating something together, which is different from living because of someone else's point of view. And at that point, it's not about community, it's about letting someone else subjugate you to such degree that even your sense of self-worth and self-love are subjugated to that point of view.
And Miguel, how come so many of us struggle to be authentic in the world?
Because we think it's natural. Because this system was there before we were born. It might stay after we pass away. You can say it's like Mick Jagger in that song. He satirizes, he can't be the same man if he doesn't smoke the same cigarette as me. I can't get no satisfaction. Basically, we lived in a time where a lot of people, in order to sell us stuff, they want to make sure that we have an inferiority complex that makes us think we need those products. Imagine how many businesses would go out of business if we all of a sudden had a good sense of self and sense of who we are and self-love and self-respect. A lot of companies would lose that business because their whole structure is built upon someone's shame, someone's self-doubt, and someone's sense of lack of security. And it's just a reflection of what some other people do in our life. It's the best way to control someone else's will is to make them doubt themselves, to make them doubt their capacity to say yes and no, to make a choice for themselves. When you control another individual like that and subjugate their will, it's easy to control them. And the best way to let go of that is to become aware of the truth. No one controls my will but I. And I am, and I say I as the whole great sense of life. I am one with everyone. I'm a living being. You and I are equals because we're both living at this very moment, and we're both free to say yes to any direction in life, and we're both free to say no to any direction in life. And we're equals because we're alive at this very moment. And to see each other with equals allows us to respect each other's free will, to respect what you say no. To respect you is to respect your capacity to say no, to say yes as you will it. And the fact that you and I are talking right now is because we both said yes. Despite the technical issues we had earlier, we both said, yes, let's talk a bit longer because we want to engage. We create a community because we both say yes. And that's mutual respect. But when we don't have that respect, then I don't want to hear that no. I want you to always say yes, or I don't want you to say yes. I want you to say no to the things I want you to say yes or no to. Then that level of control begins to this downward spiral of imposing and subjugation, where the need to domesticate someone else with based on your point of view of who they should be begins this line of disrespect that, unfortunately, all we have to do is turn on the news and watch the darkest form of that in life and history all throughout the world. So from that point of view, it existed before us. All we have to do is just watch the history of our countries, the history of the world, to see that. But we can change it. And we start with who we are. The only person I'm able to control is myself, to the tips of my own fingers. And I can let go of those conditions that subjugate me. You see, the same energy I use to move my arm, to move my leg, is the same energy I use to create a thought. Every thought I have in my belief system has power because I say yes to it. And if there's anything negative in my belief system, I have the complete freedom to change my mind, to say no to that belief, and that belief ceases to exist. That's the thing about a belief. It only exists only while I say yes to it. The moment I say no, it ceases to exist because it's not real.
And Miguel, what role do you think consciousness plays in helping us to be more authentic?
Well, consciousness is basically consciousness or awareness. To me, they're similar, or you can say almost the same experience, which is having a communion with the environment that surrounds us and a communion with ourselves, which simply means that I'm able to perceive life without a filter and see life as is, not as I want to see it or what my domestication tells me I should see it. I see life as it is, which allows me to see myself as I am. Without awareness of who I am, I don't see myself as a symbol, because I'm an empty symbol whose definition is completely subject to my agreement. Instead of self, I see myself as the experience of me, an experience of a living being that lives life the best I can, and I happen to be 40 years old, which is different from the version of me at being 30 or 28 or 14 or even a week ago. Every experience changes me, but the awareness with myself, that consciousness of myself, is really just to have that sense of awareness that I am alive at this very moment. I am alive to go in any direction in life, to engage, to talk, to express love if I want to. And I have a choice to love people conditionally, or I choose to love people unconditionally. The difference is if I love someone conditionally, like I was saying before, I only see what I want to see. Thus, I see life with a filter. But when I love life unconditionally is when I take out that filter, not just with the nature, with life, but with people. And when I let go of that, I see everything as life, and I see myself in that same way. I take out the filter that distorts my perception of myself, and see myself as the experience of self, formless, without a definition, knowing full well that if I give myself a definition, it is my intent or my will that gives it power. And to me, that's the consciousness of me, allowing myself simply to experience life through this being, this body, this mind that is me.
Do you think it's just enough to be aware of our situation to create a change, or do you think we need to understand it as well?
Well, that's the thing, is that the difference between I want to and I have to. I can move. The difference between my corpse and the living being that is here talking to you is that I'm alive. One day I will die, whether it's tomorrow, next week, or 70 years if I live to be as old as my great-great-great-grandfather Don Ezekiel. The difference is that I'm alive. I am this living being that can go in any direction. I'm the infinite possibility. Like a baby, when you hold a newborn baby in your arms, you can see that infinite possibility of that being, because you can hold them in your arms, and you can already imagine them being a doctor, a lawyer, an activist, a radio host, an author, an artist, a soccer player, a football player, guys. Because we're seeing that a being that has their whole life ahead of us. Well, the difference between that baby that my parents held when I was born 40 years ago and the person I am now is that I do know how to control this body. I know how to control this mind, but I'm still that infinite possibility. I have all my life ahead of me. Today is the youngest I will ever be. How do I want to live life? And that's where it's key. I choose I want to live life. I can go in any direction, and if I say yes to that direction that I like, that my preference, I'm going to use this body and I'm going to move it. I'm going to use this mind, I'm going to use it. And the awareness is that I'm the one making the choice, that I'm the one moving this body with this energy, this life force that is me, and this mind that is me. And I can go in any direction and have complete conscious of what do I want in life? How do I answer? How do I want the rest of my life to be? And that's really beautiful, because if I let my belief system dictate how I want the rest of my life to be, then I'm not living life for myself. I'm living it to live up to a dogma or a political party or a tradition or whatever. It's like, if you're attached completely, if you're fanatical about being a Beatles fan, then you're never going to enjoy the Stones. And if you're a fan of the Stones, you're never going to allow yourself to listen to the Beach Boys. Sometimes we can narrow our perception in that sense to the point where you don't even willing to listen to Bob Marley. If I'm using the examples of music to explain something that we do with everything in life. If we allowed ourselves to listen to how humanity has lived life, we can learn from the ancestors of all around the world. I can learn from your ancestors just as much as I can learn from mine and the ancestors in Asia and Africa and South America. We live in a time where, for example, right now you and I, we're talking from Ireland and California in the United States and in real time, and we're able to engage each other. And if we listen to one another, we can learn to live life and see how we've engaged it and how we live in order to understand each other. And that's the beauty. We're 7 billion human beings living life as unique as 7 billion people are. The nice thing, or to me, the beautiful thing, is that our free will can take us in all sorts of directions, and the ability to listen to one another is what allows us to create the community of us. And we can choose to do that with respect or disrespect. And we've had enough history with a lot of disrespect. We're alive to change the direction if that's what we want. And that's the beauty of it, because while we're all alive, anything is possible.
If a person is living their life to a limited filter, is there a way they can transform that and become more in the world?
Well, that's the thing, is that you become aware of the truth, and the truth is that you're only able to control to the tips of your own fingers. We can only give what we have. If we become aware that we've loved ourselves conditionally and domesticated ourselves with an image that doesn't exist, we have a choice at that moment to continue to believe that distortion, or do we choose to let go. It's like an alcoholic or drug addict that has a moment of clarity, and in that moment of clarity they have a choice. They can choose to continue in their illusion or their destructive act, or they choose to let go. Here's the thing, a moment of clarity without any action is just a thought that passes in the wind, but a moment of clarity that's followed by an action becomes a pivotal moment in our life. And we choose how do we let go? How do we regain control of what we say yes and no to? And here's the thing, from that point, we give what we have, because we can't give what we don't have. How can we give unconditional love if we don't have unconditional love for ourselves? How can I say namaste to someone if I don't know how to say namaste to myself? I begin by first letting go of those beliefs that subjugate me. And then I forgive everyone who's ever domesticated me, especially myself, because I'm the one who used my own words to go against me for all those years. when I forgive myself for all those years of conditioning or domestication, then I'm able to re-engage life. I can re-engage my community in a totally different point of view because my point of view has shifted, has changed. It's like my wife said once when we found out we were going to have a boy. All my wife's wounds with men and the issues of the tradition that she grew up with came to the forefront, and she had an emotional reaction. And one of the things she said is, "How am I going to teach a boy how to respect women? Because I only know women. How am I going to teach them to respect women?" And I said to her, "Love, there's not enough lectures or sermons that are going to work. The only way he's going to learn how to respect women is by watching me respect you." And that's the truth. And not just with my son, but with everyone in my life. If I want to teach everyone how to respect people, well, they'll learn it by watching me respect them and respect everyone's free will. And I may disagree with people, but I respect their choice. I respect their choice and their ability to say yes and no. I celebrate that. For example, right now, I'm fully aware that as I say things, people will agree with me and disagree with me at the same time, having said the exact same words, because people's perception are different. Well, I celebrate that difference because I don't control anyone else's perception. They're completely free to make agreements or disagree or agree with me in whichever way. I celebrate that. That's what allows us to be unique and to understand one another. So for me, that ability to have respect for one another comes from respecting ourselves, and that's how we share this tradition. This is how we engage one another. This is what we control. To the tips of my fingers, this is what I control. I either see life through this conditioning, or I let go of all those beliefs that subjugated me, and I see life in a totally different way. That's up to me.
Miguel, oftentimes when a person is going through a period of transformation, it can be very challenging for them.
Yeah.
Do you think there is a way that he can experience this change without experiencing the fear associated with it?
Well, here's the thing. Respecting fear. Yeah, for me, the main function of fear is to keep us safe. That's really it. You know, if we're in front of danger, if you're in front of a rattlesnake or someone with a gun, fear allows us to try survive, you know, either by fighting, fleeing, or freezing. You know, the body will secrete all these chemicals or hormones that allows us to survive an impact that, you know, we gather strength or whatever. So it's natural. But what tends to happen is that we tend to abuse fear like the way we abuse alcohol. An example is like, imagine we're watching a movie, we're seeing the Poltergeist, or we're watching the Exorcist for the very first time, and or the Blair Witch Project back when it was scary. And even though there's no danger in front of us, our mind is perceiving danger, and the body reacts with fear. That's how the mind is so powerful that if we allow ourselves to get trapped into that film, we'll experience it. But here's the thing, our mind is even more powerful than any film projector there is. We can project reasons to be afraid all around the world. And imagine how much we abuse that, how much we paralyze ourselves, how much we're willing to let go of control of our yes and our no because we're afraid to make a choice. So here's the thing. When we are aware of how fear lives in our life, the way to come to peace with it is to once again respect it, to not abuse it, and to allow it to keep us safe when we're in danger, but when we're not in danger, not having our mind project that false evidence that appears real, fear, and cripple us. So here's the thing about change in life. And I'm going to use my father as an example, and myself, of course. My father had this moment of realization that as a medical doctor, as a neurosurgeon, there was a limit to what he wanted to do. And he achieved what his domestication had pushed him to do, which is to achieve a level of mastery of a medical practice. But there was no passion. And when there's no passion, what kind of doctor are you? What kind of doctor are you, or whatever professional craftsman you are, when there's no passion and you're only doing it because you're trying to live up to someone else's expectation? My father was aware of that choice, and he made a bold move. He let go of it to follow something that was his passion, which is to help someone in a totally different way. And he was successful because he followed his passion. For me, I worked in the film industry, and all of a sudden, I wanted to be a father. I wanted to be able to help and share my family's tradition, and passion was kicked in. It was, at first, it's difficult because we're facing the unknown. Because sometimes we stay in our domestication, we stay in our fear because that's what we know. But the thing about fear is that it doesn't allow us to see that life continues even after a moment. You know, when we're so attached to an idea and we're so used to it, it's hard to imagine life without living with that idea or that belief. If we decide to let go, we become aware that we're still alive. And while there's life, anything is possible. We can survive. We can learn to engage. We can learn to do those things. Right now, my mother, she's 64 years old, and a few months ago, she retired from her work because her body could no longer do the work she was doing. And she was a pit boss at a casino. She loved working. And she liked working. She worked there for 25 years. She enjoyed it. And then her body couldn't do it, and she didn't like the hours, and she accepted the truth that her body was telling her, so she let go. But she didn't want to live with either one of me or my brothers. She wanted to still be independent, so she reinvented herself. She reinvented herself and became, by default, a project manager for all the family. You know, she's like, all right, you guys are busy. Let me help you with this. Let me help you with that. And she's been really busy. You know, she keeps telling me, I don't know how I did all these things while I still worked. Like, I'm busier now than I was before my retirement. That's the thing about life. When we've chosen to listen to our heart and be aware that we're no longer happy doing what we're doing, and we want to make a change in our life that makes us happy, that fulfills not only just our soul, but fulfills our heart. It's not even bravery. It's this willingness to live life. And the only thing holding you back is fear, but a false fear. A false fear saying that we're not going to be able to survive. We won't be able to live without this comfort zone. This comfort zone has kept you alive. Why would you want to do that? Well, here's the thing. Because we are alive. And while there's life, anything is possible. Let's give life the opportunity to say yes to us just as much as it has the opportunity to say no to us. It's better to let life say yes or no to us rather than us saying no to us based on our fear and hold us back because of it. So I wish I could say there's a magical pill that takes away the fear. But for me, when I speak, or even when I do an interview, I always get those goosebumps. I always get nervous. And the thing that allows me to get over that fear is opening my mouth. And as soon as I open my mouth and the words are coming out, hey, I can do this. Let's do this. And that's it. The willingness to take a step.
And Miguel, I heard a while ago that when a person has optimal self-trust, they have optimal self-love. Do you think this is true?
Yeah. Well, of course, we use different words for anything. Ultimate love, for me, is the same as unconditional love, which is simply allowing that emotional love to be expressed without any fear. To me, that's really it. To allow ourselves to feel love without the fear of what will they say, what will they think. It's not even the fear of getting hurt. It's just simply allowing ourselves the permission to enjoy that feeling at this very moment. It's like allowing ourselves allowing ourselves the pleasure of feeling our pleasure when we eat a great meal or hug a dear friend or kiss our beloved. It's experiencing ultimate love or unconditional love is just simply the moment we allow ourselves to experience it. And that's what conditional love is. Conditional love is like a dam that holds that emotion back, and I'm only able to experience it only if I live up to a certain expectation and certain requirements are met. If I open that floodgate, if I destroy that dam, love flows without any fear. It's the same as saying, I'm no longer afraid to experience me being alive. It's the same.
And what do you think stops us from actually experiencing that in our lives?
Guilt, shame, part of our domestication. We have to live up to someone's expectation in order to feel that. It's back to what we talked at the beginning. Like I said before, domestication is a system of reward and punishment by which we model the behavior of an individual. If you live up to the expectation, you get the reward. And since we're emotional beings, that reward feels like acceptance, which feels like love. When we don't live up to the expectation, we're worthy of the punishment, which feels like rejection, the opposite, or the lack thereof of love. And one of the things that we use is that guilt, is that shame. It's a shame of our body, ashamed of our senses, ashamed of life. And you can say that some people it's heavier, it's more powerful than others. And to let go of it, to let go of those conditions, those beliefs that subjugate us, is what freedom is. Personal freedom is to say yes and no with a complete freedom of life. And one of those things is to allow ourselves the permission, or simply let go of the permission, just simply allow ourselves and say yes to the experience, yes to life, yes to ourselves. Yes, it can go in any direction. Yes to our passions, yes to our frustrations, yes to this, I disagree with that. I disagree with him, I disagree with her, I'm okay with that, but I respect it. And that's the key, to allow ourselves to be us. And what keeps peace with us, what allows us to live in harmony, is mutual respect. That mutual respect that we have for ourselves is the respect I'm going to give. And if I'm ashamed of myself, if I feel guilty for being me, based on someone else's point of view, then it's hard to give that respect to anyone else. Common sense, common courtesy, is the key to good manners, you can say. We do that because we want to be courteous to someone. We want to share the same respect that we want to receive on others. So for me, no longer being guilty of this body, no longer being ashamed of what I look like or what this body looks like, whether I'm 5'8" with a receding hairline and a belly. If I let go of that, then I'm seeing myself for the very first time, and I choose to love myself. This is who I am.
And Miguel, who have you found it hardest to love in your own life?
Oh, that's easy. Myself. For the longest time, if I look back on my life, the hardest person to love was myself, because I believed every judgment. I believed every precondition. Like you grew up in Mexico. I grew up in Mexico, and if I look more European, you're more accepted. If you look more indigenous, you're rejected. And I grew up with racial taunts and whatever, and eventually, little by little, I let go of that. I let go of that belief that I'm inferior to someone else's just sheer by my natural features. I'm not inferior to anyone, nor am I superior to anyone. I'm a living being, and I'm living the best with what I've got and who I am. So you can say that shedding all those conditions was liberating. And I could say the hardest person to love was myself, because that's the person I saw from the moment from the moment I'm born to the moment I die. I'm the first person I see myself in the morning, and I'm the last person I say goodnight to at night. This is me. So how do I want to live the rest of my life with me? Because I can't escape myself. Those moments of solitude is when you see the truth of how my relationship with myself is. If I'm alone and I can't stand to be with myself, then that's the true nature of what my relationship is, and I have a choice. I can allow that disharmony to continue, or I can take the time and heal it. I can heal it through spirituality. I can heal it with psychology. I can heal it with therapy. I can heal it with music. I can heal it with all the instruments that humanity has created, all the beautiful traditions that humanity has created to let go of conditional love. And that's the beauty of it. Your tradition has many wonderful things that lets go of conditional love. My tradition has also done it as well. We're human beings who've experienced life, and we've experienced the ups and downs. So, yeah, that's my answer.
They say that attachment is one of the root causes of suffering. Can you tell me a little bit about this?
Yeah, well, an attachment is to make something that's not a part of you by an emotional investment or intellectual investment or energetic, whichever word you want to use. But here's the thing, an attachment is natural and normal for as long as we're able to detach when a moment is over. We can call attachment a form of engaging a moment. I engage this conversation, for example, and when the conversation is over, I'm able to detach. Or you can say disengage. Attach, detach, or engage, disengage. It's normal, but what makes it unnormal, what makes it unhealthy, that's the better word. What makes it unhealthy is that when the moment is over, I'm so attached that I'm not able to detach, that I lose the capacity to detach from a moment. And all of a sudden I'm stuck. I'm stuck in a moment that no longer is life. And I'm holding on because I define myself by that moment. And the worst thing that can happen is for that moment to change. So now I'm doing the very best I can to keep it alive, to keep it relevant, because I see myself through this attachment. Yes, you can say that. I know that here in America there's a movie called Napoleon Dynamite, and there's a character named Uncle Rico. And Uncle Rico is this guy who was a quarterback in 1984, and he won the championship, and he found all this glory, and he was loved by everyone because he was that state champ quarterback. And then fast forward 20 years later, he is still driving in the same band, still wearing his high school football jerseys, and still dreaming of becoming this big person. But he's not living life at this present moment. He's still stuck in 1984, that year where he was cool. And now he is not. But he's doing desperately trying to stay relevant, even after 20, or now case 30 years have passed. So an attachment that strong can lead us to one thing. It can lead us to blind ourselves and attach ourselves to such a moment that we become like Don Quixote de la Mancha, where all these books of chivalry tell us what to do, and I only can do what these books tell me to do. And I begin to distort everything. I distort windmills, and I see them as giants, and I see an old sad horse, and I see the stallion of a horse, or I see Dulcinea, and even though in the book he never meets her, in the movie he does, and it's Sophia Loren, and he projects that beauty of Sophia Loren onto this lady who's not really Sophia, and he only sees what he wants to see. So when we're so attached, we begin to distort knowledge or our perception to such degree that we're no longer seeing life as is, especially ourselves. And worst of it, we're no longer living life. We're no longer able to let go of a moment and engage in a new moment, because that's what we know. That's what makes us feel comfortable. That's what makes us feel safe. And fear comes in of the unknown. So from that point, to the ability to detach is just simply that moment where we accept the truth that this moment is no longer serving us and we're still alive.
Miguel, how do you think these attachments prevent us from being our authentic self?
Because our perception begins to be distorted by the attachment. We begin to see ourselves like that image in that moment. And that's the thing. We change. Like I'm not the same person I was when I was 14 or 28 or even a week ago. I change, and an attachment doesn't allow me to see that change. It freezes me in time, just as a belief that's no longer relevant is still you still try your best to keep it relevant, even though it's no longer reflecting life. And we live in a life of illusion at that moment.
The big part of being authentic as well, Miguel, is actually honoring our emotions. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, our emotions are real. What may trigger them may not be real. The image I like to use is examples. When my son was born, I was holding in my arms, and I was so happy. I was so incredibly happy about holding my son in my arms. And then in my thought, my mind was a firm ground for a moment of doubt or a moment of fear, and I thought of the word SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. And all of a sudden, for the very first time, I felt the fear of what it is to lose someone you love that much. And all of a sudden, my whole body changed. I could feel fear going all around my body. And nothing changed. Nothing. My son was still alive. My son was in my arms. And the only thing that had changed was I paid attention to a thought that brought so much fear into my body. That's why I say our emotions are real, because I was experiencing that emotion. But what triggered it was not real, because at that moment my son was not dying, nor does he had SIDS. But my mind perceived it, and I was firm ground for it, and I reacted. So for me, my emotions are this instrument of transformation, because it exposes the truth. It's like a car alarm. You put on the car alarm, and when you touch it, it just goes off, alerting you to something threatening it. Well, our emotions are the same way. Whenever our emotions of anger or frustration or sadness or fear come roaring in, it's because a thought has been triggered, a wound has been triggered, and it's now exposed. And like I said before, a moment of clarity is that moment where we become aware of the truth, and we have a choice to either continue believing it or to let it go. And now this wound, this belief, is completely exposed by my emotion. What do I want to do with it? Well, I give it scrutiny. I give the scrutiny. I'm able to say, is this still truth? Is this still valid? Is this something I still believe in? And if it doesn't survive my scrutiny, I'm able to let it go. I'm able to say, I no longer believe it. And I begin the healing process. You can say that's part of what we do in psychology, that we work with our therapist or doctor, and we process our emotions. We bring out to light that which we've forgotten or we've kept subconscious. And now that we're exposing it, we can begin the healing process. And that's the beauty of it all. Our emotions are this instrument that allows us to become aware of that belief, that condition, that wound. And we are honest with ourselves, and we say to ourselves, do I want to continue living life with this, or do I want to let it go? Do I continue to believe in it, or do I choose to no longer believe in it? And that's the power we have. And that's why I think it's one of the most beautiful, wonderful, powerful instruments we have, because it exposes the truth when it gets triggered. And that's how we honor our emotions, because that emotion is our experience. This is how we're feeling. This is how I'm feeling at the very moment. Do I want to continue feeling like this? And the answer is no. There we go. We continue on with the process.
If one of our listeners is listening in today and they're struggling to be authentic in their lives, is there any practical steps they could take to be more true to themselves?
Sure. Allow yourself to enjoy your breath. Okay, here's the thing that I say by that. It's the most simplest thing. It's the one thing that we can all experience. Our breath. Our breath is when we allow in the air that surrounds us, the environment that surrounds us, to nurture us. And when we exhale, we nurture the environment that surrounds us. It's the most beautiful symbiotic relationship there is. We give life to these plants, these flowers, these leaves, and those plants give us life with the air we breathe. We're alive, and allowing ourselves to experience our breath is allowing ourselves to experience being alive. And at that moment, the sense of who you are, the authentic self that you are, life, is completely exposed. And if you're breathing and all of a sudden you have in the forefront a thought that says, how dare you think this, how dare you do that, become aware of something. All those beliefs that you're hearing in your mind and in your fear are only there because you say yes to it. You have all the complete power to change your mind, to let go of it, to no longer believe it. Here's the thing. Every word we use is an empty symbol whose definition is completely subject to agreement. When we say something is perfect, it's something that is completely free of any flaw. Well, guess what? We define what a flaw is. There's no such thing as flaw in nature. Everything is perfect because there's no such thing as a flaw. A flaw only exists in our belief system, in the language and knowledge that we've used with the agreements with one another, which means we're judging ourselves with the things we believe in, and we can let go of it. We are perfect at this very moment because we are alive, and because we are alive, I can go in any direction in life I want. And today is the youngest I will ever be. How do I want to live my life? And from that point, to experience yourself, your authentic self, is not looking through yourself through a definition, because now you know that a definition is completely subject to agreement. Then the authentic self is the experience of you, the experience of being who you are, a living being with a full capacity to live life in any way, shape, or form. And while there's life, anything is possible, especially healing from the wounds that conditional love has left in our life. And all that from our breath. All that just from allowing ourselves to experience our breath. And, for me, I run. I run half marathons and full marathons, and I get for 26 miles or 13.1 miles, I get to experience my breath over and over and over. It's a wonderful experience. It's what people do in yoga. It's what people do when they kiss, when they engage each other in love. It's when we pray. It's when we sing, and when we dance, when we do the things we love to do. It's just that moment where we're aware that we're alive. And it's wonderful.
Finally, if anybody wants to find out more about your work or your book, how could they do it?
Well, they can find me at my home base, which is MiguelRuizJr.com, my website. I'm also on Facebook and social media and all that kind of thing, but my home is my website, MiguelRuizJr.com.
Been a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, Miguel, thank you so much for having me on your show. I really am honored, and I hope you have a wonderful time and you're enjoying the rain and the mist.
I'm loving it, loving every minute of it.
Yeah, I'm going up to Seattle in a couple of days, so I get to experience something similar. So
great.
Yeah, I get to have a cup of coffee.
Thanks very much.
Thank you too, and have fun. Enjoy everything in life.
I will. Thanks very much.
Right.
Cheers.
All right. Cheers.
Bye.
Adios.
The health zone. Ah, the health zone. Ooh, the health zone.
Thanks for listening to another inspiring and thought-provoking show of The Health Zone. I'm Micheál O'Mathúna. Just to remind you, you can find us on facebook.com/The Health Zone Show, or you can join our Facebook group, The Health Zoners. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest under The Health Zone. To gain further invaluable resources on health and well-being, go to our website, www.thehealthzoneshow.com. When you're on there, join The Health Zone and you'll receive a free copy of my latest ebook, 7 Ways to Boost Your Overall Well-Being. Finally, I would love to hear any feedback you may have on the show, and even if there are any particular guests or topics which you're interested in, please email me on tunein@thehealthzoneshow.com. Until next time, this is Micheál. Thanks for listening, and I wish you a very healthy, happy, and authentic week.
Paving your way